Stephen A., what does this all mean? I mean, by firing Fisher, is Phil Jackson saying this team was a playoff team that's not living up to its expectations, or is he saying that Derek Fisher's just a bad coach?
Well, I think, first of all, he certainly wasn't a good coach because he was relatively young at his job, and he was learning on the job, sort of on-the-job training, and Phil and everybody knew that. They certainly were not happy when he was trying to dim down expectations because they believed that they could make the playoffs in the Eastern Conference, and him saying if you didn't make the playoffs, it wouldn't be a disappointment of a season. They certainly were not happy about that. They're not happy about the fact that they've lost 5 straight and 9 of their last 10. Those are givens. But the big elephant in the room that everybody's a bit reluctant to talk about is that issue that transpired earlier this season with Matt Barnes. As you guys know, I've been covering the league for many, many years, and there's a lot of guys that I talk to throughout the league, and when you mention Derek Fisher's name, that eyebrow gets raised, and the manner in which everything went down, where you got Matt Barnes on his Facebook page still is devastated and incredibly heartbroken because a guy he considers his friend, he believes betrayed him in that fashion. It's something that nobody has forgotten about, and it's something that's still being talked about. And if you're the New York Knicks, you remember how he took the day off supposedly to go to California, and then ultimately he ended up in the situation that he was in. That just wasn't a good thing. And to me, everything has snowballed from there. So that with internal differences, with Fisher wanting to, not do the triangle, and Phil thinking that you could still win with it. 1 minute Phil saying he's married to it, another minute he's not married to it. There's so many different things that are going on when it comes to those two. But in the end, it just didn't bode well for him. It's just that simple.
What's strange, Stephen, is we're not that far removed from a team that was 20-20 and 1 game out of a playoff spot. So how did the bottom completely drop out?
Well, again, from what I'm being told, Derek Fisher wanted to do things a little bit differently than Phil wanted to do it. But also, even though they swear it was Phil's decision and Phil's alone, and we have to take the Knicks at their word, I'm also hearing that, Dolan wasn't happy with, some of the publicity that Fisher had coming in his direction based off of the Matt Barnes thing, along with the way the team has been playing recently and how he was trying to dim down expectations for this team making the playoffs. It was a combination of all of those different things that I was told ultimately played a role in that, although it was ultimately Phil's decision to say, okay, this ain't worth it. We may need to move in a different direction. That's all I know at this particular juncture, guys. I was on First Take when it happened. It was a little over 2 hours ago, and ever since then, I had a radio show, obviously, to do from 1 to 3, so I got phone calls and text messages in between. That's what I'm being told at this moment, but I'll continue to dig.
Here's what I don't get, Stephen. If you think that this is a playoff team, and even though they're 1-9 in their last 10, the playoffs are not a pipe dream. Why are you hiring Kurt Rambis for the rest of the season when Kurt Rambis was a historically bad head coach with Minnesota?
Well, that's the question I asked. My instant reaction was that he was 32-132 in 2 years as the head coach of the Minnesota Timberwolves. First going 15 wins and the second one going 17 wins. And that's really at a 19% winning percentage in Minnesota. There's no way to slice that. The flip side to it is that Kurt Rambis knows the triangle. He's been an assistant coach under Phil Jackson for his years in the second go-round in L.A. On top of it all, he has absolutely no problem with doing what Phil wants to do as it pertains to the triangle offense. So if you're not getting that level of resistance and you feel that you have the perfect individual that has the confidence to incorporate the system that you want and do so enthusiastically with minimal questions, that could obviously play a role in all of this. But I also believe, no matter what the Knicks say, that the fact that Phil was willing to put Kurt Rambis in there says to me that this may not be just a Phil decision, although they're swearing it is just a Phil decision. Because if it was a Phil decision, I got to believe you'd have a better backup plan than this. Nevertheless, that's not the case right now, and that to me, that's a bit problematic. That tells me that something else is going on. I can tell you the players were blindsided. They didn't see it coming. They had no idea that it was coming. Certainly nobody requested that Derek Fisher be fired, because the presumption was that Derek is Phil Jackson's boy, and obviously you couldn't go to Phil to complain about Derek. So that was the perception anyway. So, again, it's all over the place right now. But these are the kind of things you're hearing coming out of the Knicks game.
Steven, if it doesn't end up being Tom Thibodeau, is it because of his connection with Jeff Van Gundy or because he doesn't run the triangle?
More so because he doesn't run a triangle. I mean, I don't think it's about the connection with Jeff Van Gundy. I think Dolan has been over that for a little while. And not only that, Thibodeau was a byproduct of all of that because he was simply an assistant. It wasn't like he was the head coach that got ran out like Jeff Van Gundy did or quit on the team. He was a guy that was an assistant, and he was, just collateral damage. And so I don't think that he's frowned upon by Dolan the way some may perceive it to be. I just think that Tom Thibodeau is known as a defensive wizard, but limited offensively. To me, as far as I'm concerned, there's only two coaches out there that the New York Knicks should be considering for the job. That's Tom Thibodeau or Mark Jackson. Those are the two candidates that would come to my mind. But neither of them have a relationship with running the triangle offense, and that's where it gets a bit tricky. 1 minute Phil says he's married to it, according to what I was told about what he said in the press conference today. No, he's not married to it. So that's news to me because everybody that I've heard from says Phil believes that the triangle is something that could still work, and he's fixated on making sure that it's incorporated. And the complaint against him has been that he's more about winning the way he wants to win as opposed to simply winning.
Stephen A., if he's not married to it, he's sleeping with it. I mean, come on. He wants the triangle run.
Oh, I agree with you. But I'm just telling you again.
What he's saying.
He said today,
right.
But religiously we've heard the other. So it's like what's going on here. We simply don't know when it comes to Phil Jackson right now, and that's what we're trying to find out.
Now, before we let you go, I'm here in L.A., and the whispers here.
Lucky you, bro. Go ahead.
The whispers here, Stephen, are that Jeannie Buss, his fiancée, is going around telling people that Phil's not totally enamored or happy in New York. Now, the people I know in New York are saying that he is happy. What's the truth?
Well, that's not a whisper. I guess they heard me talking. I said something on First Take. I said it on radio today. I'll tell it to you. From what I'm hearing, at the end of this season, Jeannie Buss will be getting rid of her brother, Jim Buss. Mitch Kupchak, who's attached at the hip to Jim Buss, will probably be out the door as well. And once that happens, that will open the floodgates for Phil to return and try to run the Lakers in the post-Kobe Bryant era with his fiancée, Jeannie Buss. That's what I've been told. Now, obviously, he still has contractual obligations to Dolan. Dolan would have to allow that by letting him out of his contractual obligations. It remains to be seen if that is what is going to happen. But from what I'm told, that's the plan. Jeannie Buss is going to get rid of Jim Buss because Jeannie Buss came on my show, interviewed with me last November, looked me dead in my face and told me that she will not hesitate to fire her brother if he doesn't get the job done. I don't know if you've noticed the Lakers, but they're not getting the job done. And Mitch Kupchak obviously is an individual as the GM. I think a guy that's pretty damn good at what he does, but hasn't shown that in recent memory because he's been working for Jim Buss. They're considered to be attached at the hip. As a result, the moves will be made, and then the gates will be open for Phil Jackson to come in. Not necessarily have an ownership stake, but have executive power with Jeannie in order to pick basketball personnel, et cetera, and go from there. But again, that's jumping the gun because that would have to be something that James Dolan allows. If he doesn't allow it, then it can't happen because Phil wouldn't be able to get out of his contractual obligations with New York. But knowing Phil, James Dolan was so desperate to happen. Remember, they originally went to him to be the coach. He was the one that brought up president of basketball operations as a possible landing spot. He got that. So who's to say he didn't negotiate a clause that would allow him to be, to get out of his deal so he could return to L.A. That's not beyond the realms of comprehension, considering how desperate Dolan was to get him to New York to begin with.